everyone at Goodreads. It is Romance Week at Goodreads. I'm Sarah MacLean, and I'm here to recommend books for all of you in the romance genre. It's Valentine's Day week. People like to talk about romance on Valentine's Day. I like to talk about romance all the time, but I'm happy to fill the Valentine's Day void with books if you need it. The romance team at Goodreads asked for you to ask for recommendations from me, and I have a ton of Post-it notes here that I'm going to try and rapid fire recommend books as part of. The first one, though, that I want to touch on is what's a good book for a romance skeptic? And I'm going to say, just like any genre, romance, you should pick a romance that looks like it might be fun for you and looks like it might be something that a romance skeptic, if you are skeptical or if you know a romance skeptic, might be interested in. So hopefully there's one in this batch that you or your friend who's skeptical of romance seems interested in. And I'm going to say all of these are awesome, so go with it. So let's start with roommates. Lots and lots of requests this week for roommate romances, which makes me wonder if there's like some quarantine, pandemic roommate love happening. I think there's probably a lot of roommate enemies happening too, and maybe some roommate enemies to lovers. I'm going to start with a debut romance by a woman named Rosie Danan, who has written a book called The Roommate. It was out during the pandemic, and it's about a heroine who travels for a guy she thinks is the one, and then discovers that he's ghosted her and kind of pieced out and left her with a new roommate in a new city, in a new house, and that roommate happens to be a porn star. So the whole book is about these two people falling for each other. It's super feminist, it's very fierce, and it's extremely sex positive. So I think you'll love it. Historical romance with an openly Jewish character. Felicia Grossman's Dalliances and Devotion is my pick for this. The heroine is a beauty consultant. It's set in 1871 in the United States, and she's a beauty consultant and also an heiress, because obviously she is. And she needs to get home to get her fortune, except she's been getting some death threats, so they send her a Pinkerton guard who happens to be an ex-soldier and super hot, and also a guy who she kind of left heartbroken a long time ago. So it's a second chance love story. It's a childhood, like, friends-ish to lovers-ish story. It's a road trip romance, and it's absolutely delicious. Oh, also there were some requests for bodyguard romances, and I think this one kind of fits. So let's go with it. I Will Kill You Because You Were Doing Things to My Heart. Some of these requests were so awesome. Listen, I Will Kill You Because You Are Doing Things to My Heart is like the siren call of the alpha hero. So I'm going to go with the most alpha hero who I can think of. And also a writer who does the I Will Kill You Because You Are Doing Things to My Heart thing pretty regularly, and that is Kresley Cole. Her series Immortals After Dark is one of my very favorites, which will come as no surprise to anybody who knows me, and the fact that I have a podcast where we spent the first season of the podcast talking about this series. But the book in this series that is literally I Will Kill You Because You Are Doing Things to My Heart is a book called Lothaire. Don't start there. Start at the beginning and take the whole ride, but Kresley Cole is my pick for this one. Also, I Will Kill You Because You Were Doing Things to My Heart is like my full jam. Romance with a non-binary character. I've got a historical for you by Sebastian. It's called Unmasked by the Marquess, and the main character, there obviously are two main characters here. One of them is a crusty Marquess, and the other is a housemaid who is in disguise as a kind of wealthier gentleman trying to get her best friend married. She is non-binary. She uses she pronouns in the book, so I'm using them here, but it is so sexy and so delicious, and Kat has this remarkable way of writing like queer stories in the Regency without dwelling on trauma in any way, which is all I want from my queer romance. So I hope that's what you want too, and I hope this one really hits you in the feels, because it really hit me in the feels. Best friends to lovers. There were like 200 requests for friends to lovers. And so it was really hard to pick one, but my favorite one recently, my favorite one of the last year, is Tracey Livesay's Like Lovers Do, which is a little bit friends to lovers, a little bit forced proximity, a little bit only one bed, a little bit fake relationship, all of which were big questions from Goodreads requesters. So I think it will scratch the itch of a lot of people, not just friends to lovers fans, but this story is about a heroine who is a doctor who's put on a really unfair forced administrative leave for a week, and she it happens to coincide with her best friend needing a fake girlfriend for a family trip where his ex-girlfriend is going to be, and he just needs like somebody who will bring no drama to the situation. But of course, it's a romance novel, so there is a little drama that's brought to the situation, and also some banging hot hammock sex. So, Tracey. Next, a fantasy romance with a black heroine. And my pick for this one is Jasmine Silvera's Death's Dancer, which is a really fun, sexy, high fantasy novel set in a kind of world where dancers are able to harness power. They're like, if you have a kind of particular kind of dancer, you can harness like the power of the universe. And you can harness so much power that in the past there has been they've threatened to basically end the world. So dancing is moderated, and it has like a lot of laws placed around who can dance and when and how. But the heroine is a gods dancer, and she falls for a hero who is like 2 centuries old and super duper like locked up and controlled, and he's a necromancer. And then he just like comes unraveled with her, and the two of them really sort of blow up, and it's awesome. So that's my pick. Historical erotica. So my pick for this is not one single person. It is not one single book. My pick for this is Jess Michaels. You mentioned Nicola Davidson, and she would have been my other pick for this. So Jess Michaels is somebody not to miss when it comes to historical erotica. She has a ton of books out, and all of her series are really great. And I recommend like just reading through the descriptions of all of her books and picking the one that you think will sort of scratch your own itch in whatever way that means. But also, because you recommended Nicola Davidson, I'm sure you've probably read this, but in case you haven't, an anthology came out in the fall called Duke I'd Like to F, and that is Nicola and Eva Leigh and Adriana Herrera and Joanna Shoup and Sarah Simone. And it's fabulous, and basically all historical erotica featuring dukes. And who doesn't love a duke right now, right? Main character with a disability. My favorite book from last year is Milla Vane's high fantasy novel, high fantasy romance, Heart of Blood and Ashes. And it is so sexy and so feminist and so intense. And the heroine has a disability, and she is so badass and cool. And the hero wants to just like bring her the heads of her enemies, which is really the kind of full mood that I'm in these days. So that's my pick for that. Plus size heroes. There are not enough of these in romance. Jessa Kane has a couple that you will definitely love. One of them is also a medieval, but the one that I want to recommend today is by an author named Marie Lipscomb. It's called Her Lady's Champion. It is also a medieval. There were a lot of medieval requests for this video, so this does a little bit of double duty, but the heroine is a lady who is a little bit in disguise, like kind of having a day out on the town at the tourney. And the tourney gets sort of attacked, and a bunch of people have to run, and she finds herself on the run and in disguise because no one can know that she's a lady. And she's in the woods with all these like champions from the tourney. And one of them is Brandon the bear, who is the one who she's always been really like into from afar. And now they get to be into each other from up close. And it's a little bit only one bed, and it's medieval, and they're in the woods, and there's a little bit of like drama and intrigue. And of course, this sort of big question of like, what's going to happen with these two when everything becomes clear that she's a lady and he's basically just a giant fighter. So yeah, it's good. You should read that one. Chef romances. Food is my love language, and chef romances are some of my very favorite romances, so it was extremely hard to choose just one. But my pick is Sabrina Soul's Delicious Satisfaction, which is about this like incredibly awesome heroine who's like a killer chef and amazing in all ways and has this great restaurant, who finds herself in need of a lawyer for romance reasons, as I like to say. And the lawyer that she brings in is an old friend who's kind of had a torch burning for her forever. And he's basically watched her date a string of terrible men, and he's had enough, and he'd like to seduce her right now, please. So, yum. Space Princesses. This person said that they'd already read Jessie Mihalik, and so I'm not going to recommend Jessie Mihalik, even though she has a whole series about space princesses. If this is interesting to you, you should read them. But I am going to recommend Robin Lovett, which is a little bit of like an edgier recommendation on this front. It's not quite spacey. Robin Lovett's series, Planet of Desire, is about an alien planet with an atmosphere that is pure aphrodisiac. So when people crash land on this planet, it's a lot for them. But the people who live on this planet kind of like consider sex like as one of many needs, like a Maslow's kind of hierarchy thing. Sex is up there on this planet. And the book that I'm going to recommend to you is Forbidden Desire, which is the fourth book in the series. And the heroine is one of the aliens, and her job on the planet is to basically heal people using orgasms. And the hero is like a military grade, like superhuman who's been made so that he's been sort of genetically altered so that he can't feel pain or pleasure or anything. And she has to cure him with sex. And it's awesome. So I don't know if this is quite what you're looking for, but you should try it. Space Princesses. She's like not a princess. She's literally a goddess. That's what they call her. So big fan. There was a request for LGBTQ enemies to lovers romance, and also a request for spy romances. And if anybody knows me, they know that I don't actually read a ton of spy romances, so I'm very excited to be able to do a double duty on this. One of my favorite books from last year was a book called HoneyTrap by Aster Glenn Gray. It is so cool. Also, there were some requests for like unusual historicals or historicals that weren't, US, UK set. And this one is US set, but it's set in the 1960s, the 1980s, and then the now. And it's sort of it's not time travel, it's time slip. And it's a Soviet spy and an American spy on a tour through the heartland of the United States after Khrushchev's visit in the 60s. And they are trying to find a person who allegedly attempted to assassinate Khrushchev. It's so delicious. It's so unusual. It's a book that every page of it felt like a revelation in terms of romance. It's a slow burn, but it also is packed with tropes. It's like enemies to lovers. I mean, pure enemies to lovers, right? Like, how do these two end up together at all? They're Soviet and US spies in the Cold War. Like, this isn't going to work. But there's like only one bed stuff and going home to your lover's family for Christmas stuff. And it's just so delicious. So if you're willing to try something a little bit off the beaten path, that is a great one. HoneyTrap. angsty second chance love story. This is really like singing my song. I have written too many, maybe, of these angsty second chance love stories because I love them so much. But my pick for this one is Kennedy Ryan's Queen Move, which is... talk about a second chance love story. I mean, these two have been fated mates from birth. It begins with them as babies, like sharing in the same bathtub. Like they were neighbors. They grew up. We see them grow up together. We see them have their first kiss. They're in middle school together. And then like a family tragedy happens and the two of them are separated for years. And they go on and they live their lives, and the heroine becomes this like incredible political operative, and the hero gets married to another woman and like gets divorced. And there's so much, it's a real saga of a love story. And then they come back together at the heroine's father's funeral, and it just becomes clear that these two have been destined for each other forever. Nobody writes these books like Kennedy Ryan. This one's Queen Move, but she's got a whole series. In all of her series, there's at least one angsty second chance. So if you've read Queen Move, look around and see what else she's got. But she's my pick. Black historical romance. I'm going to give you two, both American set. Everyone who reads historical has read Beverly Jenkins. If you haven't, you should. But she's got a new book out this week. It's called Wild Rose. The heroine is a rancher in Wyoming, and she's awesome and like awesome. And it begins in a blizzard, and she discovers a horse coming down the road, and it doesn't have a rider. So she searches for the rider and discovers a really fabulous carpenter / newspaper man who's come to do a story on someone in her town, and they fall in love, and it's perfect, as all of Bev's romances are. And then the other one that I want to recommend is Piper Huguley's A Champion's Heart. I haven't recommended any romances yet in this video that are sweet, meaning closed door. There's no sex on the page, and that is a place where if you're interested in romance but not sure about sex, Piper's a great place to start. A Champion's Heart is my favorite. It's about a boxer. I love a boxer. And a woman who they had a young love, and then he went off to win his fortune in the fights so that he could come back worthy of her. And he does. And he is. And it's so beautiful. And Piper is a gorgeous writer. Forced Proximity is the next one. I'm going to give you 3 rapid fire ones here because for me, Forced Proximity is all about like the books being as sexy as possible. So these are going to be 3 what we call one-handed reads, but really delicious ones. So my first one is Naima Simone's Flirting with Skin. No, not Skin. Maybe Skin, Flirting with Sin. And it's about a heroine who's like trying to find herself, really. Like she runs the family business and she's not really sure she loves it. But she goes off and she ends up in a snowstorm in a hotel where her sweet mate in the hotel just happens to be a rock star having a bad weekend and needing a cuddle. And it's great. The second one is Adriana Anders. Adriana Anders is Loving the Mountain Man. The heroine, somebody else asked for car accident romances, and this is a good car accident romance too. The heroine gets in a car accident on a snowy night and then is rescued by this like mountain man with a cabin on the hill, and she can't get out because it's been snowing. So whatever will they do? And then the third one is Katie Roberts' Ménage romance, Gifting Me to His Best Friend. And it's about a couple who go on vacation for Christmas to a snowed-in hotel with the hero's best friend, who's also, with the husband's best friend, who is also the wife's best friend. And they've always kind of had a thing for each other. These 3 have all kind of harbored flames, long-standing flames for each other. And they finally kind of all come together in this wonderful romantic ménage story. So that's that. Colleagues to lovers. Everyone loves a colleagues to lovers story. I really like them when they're rivals to lovers also. And that is one of my very favorite Christina Lauren books called Dating You, Hating You, is about 2 rival agents in LA who, like film agents, who can't stand each other and then discover that they're in competition for a job, for basically to be like the head of their company. And it makes them kind of crazy, and it makes them really hot for each other too. So big fan of that one. Only One Bed. I've mentioned it a bunch of times already, but Diana Quincy, who has her first book out with Avon this year, her book is called Her Night with the Duke, and it's Own Voices. The heroine is an Arab heroine in the Regency, and the hero is a duke who, when the Great North Road is washed out, he lands himself in a posting inn, and he walks in and he finds the heroine in a knife fight with a bunch of racist, misogynist assholes, and she wins. He's like ready to jump into the fray and help her, and she doesn't need it because she's badass. And so they end up in a situation where it's only one room, only one bed, and they swear like only one night. So they have this intense hot night, and then the next day he leaves to go meet the woman that he is supposed to become betrothed to, and oops, turns out the woman from the knife fight is actually that woman's stepmother. And wow, there's a lot going on. He's also incredibly starchy. There were some requests for starchy heroes, starchy dukes. Here's yours, Diana Quincy's Her Night with the Duke. Reality TV romances. I have two here because I really love reality TV romances. The first one is Alexis Daria's dance-off series, which begins with Take the Lead, which is the story of one of the dancers on it's basically like Dancing with the Stars romance. So one of the routine dancers on the show has never gotten to the finals, and so like she's committed to getting to the finals this year, and her partner is this like Alaskan mountain man who wants absolutely nothing to do with this and is doing it like purely to help his family. And they are delicious together. And this book is so fun. And I love it a whole lot. And then the other is Adriana Herrera's Mangoes and Mistletoe, which is a holiday romance, but I'm really like obsessing over Great British Bake Off right now. And I don't really think it has to be a holiday romance. It's about two Dominican heroines who head off to Scotland to participate in a Great British Bake Off style baking competition for a reality television show. And they're super hot about food and super hot for each other. And it is delicious. Nobody writes a novella like Adriana. It's fabulous. So that's that. And then I said I would do one more. This person wants Miss Scarlet and the Duke, but they bang it out on the desk. Which I want to. If you're not watching Miss Scarlet and the Duke on PBS, absolutely you should. It's Victorian kind of basically romance novel, except they don't bang it out on the desk, and that's all I want. But what this person wants is a detective inspector who does, and I am here for it. So I'm going to recommend 3 series that you should check out. The first is Lisa Kleypas's Bow Street Runner series. The second is Robin DeHart's Notorious Ladies of London series, which is very kind of like madcap, historical lady detective and the like crusty inspectors who can't handle them. And then the third is the 4th, I think, book in Lorraine Heath's Scoundrels of St. James series, which is called Midnight Pleasures with a Scoundrel. And Lorraine Heath writes fabulous historical, so I, wildly recommend everything she's written, but this one is a fun one if you like Miss Scarlet and the Duke. I've not completed my pile by any stretch of the imagination, but if you follow me on Instagram at Sarah MacLean, I will be answering more of these questions all week long in honor of Goodreads Romance Week, and I want to thank Goodreads for having me, and I want to thank all of you for reading romance because it is the literature of joy, and we all could use a little more of that now and then, right? Thanks for having me.